This is part 2 of our saga of the Dennis Priebe history, which may or may not be of any value to anybody, but here it is. So we're at Pacific Union College. I'm now teaching classes. I'm now in a situation that I had never been in before, and I'm having to learn how to relate to students who are in classes mainly for a grade and, a little information along the line, okay, but how does a teacher interrelate with students in a classroom? And once again, just as it was when I was a pastor, my students were teaching me probably more about how to teach than I was learning in terms of my theological background. So I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I was given to grow and learn and find better ways to communicate the messages of Adventism. We were fitting into the classroom experience, and I was having such a great time teaching and having classes on a regular basis that I had pretty well decided that this is where I wanted to spend the rest of my life. It was a great place. Pacific Union College is a really unique place to live. I mean, it is set in such a beautiful environment, and the background is so nice to be in every day. Oh, there's a little rain, sure, but it is such a great place overall. And to raise my son Matthew there, I thought this is it. This is heaven on earth, and we were going to enjoy the rest of our life at Pacific Union College. And we went into that I went into it with that mindset. So there we were, and as I said in my last presentation, some things began to change. The new president brought in new teachers into the religion department. Some of the teachers that I had really respected were finding calls elsewhere to be part of other organizations, and I was beginning to wonder why. What was making this change at Pacific Union College that I was experiencing? Some of the new teachers were, again, around my age, 30s, early 30s, and perhaps that was seen to be best for relating to young people in the college classroom. So this was going fairly well. And then something interesting took place around the years 1976 and 1977. Two gentlemen came over the pond from Australia. One person's name was Erwin Gane, a very soft-spoken gentleman from Australia. As I came to know him, I began to respect him as probably a scholar's scholar. Very precise in his understandings and his presentations. He would dig down to the roots of words in the original languages, Greek and Hebrew, and find things there that I probably would not have found on my own. So I began to respect his ideas and his thoughts, and he became part of the mix there at Pacific Union College. And then a year or so later, another gentleman came across to Pacific Union College by the name of Desmond Ford, a very charismatic teacher, a very brilliant communicator, and one who knew Seventh-day Adventism very well. And he had been the director of the theology program there at Avondale. So he came to Pacific Union College and began to teach in the classroom. His office just happened to be next door to mine in the offices of the religion department. However, I really didn't have too much interaction with Desmond Ford. I was a young kind of rookie teacher in my early 30s, and he was the professional. He was the knowledgeable one. He was the scholar. And so mainly I just kind of listened. I didn't say too much. And so frankly, I didn't have too many conversations with Desmond Ford on any theological topics. I just didn't feel myself able to talk to him on the same level that he was at. And so what was very interesting during that period is that in the religion department, we decided to have some in-house discussions in which the subject of righteousness by faith came to the forefront. That was the issue that Desmond Ford focused on and the issue that he talked about. And so Desmond and Erwin Gane became the main discussion leaders in this understanding. The primary discussions were about justification by faith and sanctification, how these two issues related to each other, how the gospel would be changed by a different understanding of these things, and so this became the main points of that discussion. Well, this went on for several months, actually, on a regular basis, in which Erwin Gane would present his ideas on justification by faith. Desmond Ford would present his ideas on justification by faith. And I remember the then pastor of the Pacific Union College Church was Morris Venden. He sat in on those discussions as well. And one of his comments was, I came away after listening to Erwin Gane saying, "Amen, that's right." And then I came away after listening to Desmond Ford, and I said, "Amen, that's right." And his confusion was about the same as my confusion on this subject. I really didn't know where I would come down on these issues. It was after these discussions that the religion department was asked to, each member was asked to put down their thoughts after we'd listened to hours and hours of debate. And it really came down to debate because these two presenters were totally opposite in their views of how salvation and the gospel worked. And so we were asked to put down our thoughts as to what we believed about this presentation that we had sat through for several months. I would not put pencil to paper. I would not write anything. I did not have the confidence to know what I was going to believe about what the right opinion was. Because once again, these were not just scholarly debates over minutia. This was about how salvation works. This is about whether or not Seventh-day Adventists have a different message or the same message as various evangelical groups around the world. And so these were not just minor issues. What were we going to believe and teach at Pacific Union College? As again I said, I would not put pencil to paper. I did not have the confidence at that time to know where I should come down, what I should really believe. And so all I was really doing during these years, 1977 through about 1979, was just listening. I was trying to figure out what the truth was, and I began to see more and more that it was really significant. These were not minor issues. This was not discussing a certain view of prophecy that could be debated. This is about the heart of how salvation works and how I as an individual can be right with God, how I can have the knowledge that I am secure in Him. So that's the interesting part of those years through the late 1970s at Pacific Union College while I was there. Now I'm just going to say this about Desmond Ford. I came to respect him greatly as an individual. I never saw him be anything other than Christ-like and natural in his relationships with individual students or faculty members. He was always a Christian gentleman. He was never harsh. He was never unchristlike. I came to respect Desmond Ford as a great health reformer and knowledgeable about the Bible and very capable of communicating. He was also very popular among the people in the community. He taught a regular Sabbath school class, always filled to capacity. He was a challenging speaker, and people were really responding well to him. His focus during that period of time was on the gospel and on Jesus Christ, two of the most important things in all of religion. How we can have a relationship with Christ and in a meaningful and a way that assures us that we are right with God. And he began to be well received. He also then was going around the country in camp meetings here and there, speaking in most of the major churches and holding his presentations in a lot of circles in Seventh-day Adventism. So his name began to be well known outside of Australia and outside of Pacific Union College. So he was becoming a well-respected name in the Seventh-day Adventist Church during that period of time. And so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this man and his impact not only on us at Pacific Union College, but upon the Seventh-day Adventist Church as a whole, because this became a very, very significant, shall we say, stepping stone, a marker from the time of the early 1950s to the middle 1970s, and now coming down to our time today. There was a connection that was being drawn in that period of time that only later did I understand fully, that I was in the middle of something that was extremely significant for the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I really think that was my biggest privilege as a minister and as a teacher, to be able to be in the middle of that period of time that others only knew by hearing about it or having read about it. And I was able to be there in that time. And that may be the most important part of what I want to share with you during these little autobiographical episodes that we're doing, because that's the significance and that's the importance of why we are here where we are today. There is always cause and effect. Things always move from a beginning point through a process to a concluding point. And we today, in now the 2000 period, are now in the concluding parts of this process that really began in the 1950s. Again, as I say, when I was too young to even understand anything that was going on. And again, being very grateful to people like Elder Hyde, who laid it out clearly for us so that we will be able to see exactly what was being said and what was being attempted during that 1950s period, when we were being challenged as to whether we were a Christian church or whether we were a cult. And again, be very brief, the book Questions on Doctrine did shift our beliefs on two major issues: the nature of Jesus Christ and the nature of the atonement. Was the atonement fully completed at the cross? Is there a part of the atonement that continues after the cross? What is the final atonement? Those were big issues at that time. And at the end of the process, of course, in the 1950s, the evangelical leaders were satisfied that we had met their requirements, which means that we had changed some of our teachings on these issues, and they welcomed us as members in good and regular standing of the Christian community. And so we had passed the test. We were no longer a cult. And so that, again, is the background of that period of time, which I was not privy to. I only learned about it later. And now we come to the point of the period in which I had the very fortunate experience of being in the middle of major changes in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Now, I'm going to pick that up in the next segment and talk exactly about what Desmond Ford taught and what he meant, what his significance was to us today, and how we are relating to that even today.